Hello. Today is Thursday, July 25th, 2019, and this is the Pro and the Con Show. And I am your host, just as it says on my tablet there, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. As always, 15 to 20 minutes, trying to encourage us to be better citizens. Better dialogue here, having some discussion, open to at least listening to opposing views. And a lot of times I'll go through the different information streams, again, being careful not to identify them as news, because so much of what's out there is really not the news. The news just being the who, the what, the where, the when. And you know, you compile the news on a regular basis, and the basics, the who, the what, the where, and the when, that would be of any interest to the average person. Well, this takes maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you want to be very detailed about it. And the rest of the 24-hour cycle is filled by the various information streams with innuendo and opinion and prognostication and prediction and wrapped into all of that, bias. So, I normally would talk about some of the news, but today I thought I would do something different. We're actually a little bit early today. I normally do this at 6 p.m. Central Time. I'm actually at 3:20 something Central. Got something happening today at 6 p.m. So, kicking it off early, but it'll be here on Facebook, and it'll also be on my Ott in 2020 on YouTube, the Ott in 2020 channel. What I wanted to talk about is I just finished reading a book, and it's called Population 485, Meeting Your Neighbors One Siren at a Time. And it's written by this fellow named Michael Perry, and interestingly enough, he's from here in Wisconsin. Where I'm currently residing. I grew up in northern Illinois in a small town, Grand Ridge, Illinois, and the population of Grand Ridge back in the day was something like 450, 500 people. So it was really a great read. I have to say this, and not because I'm from a small town, but to understand the kind of adventures, if you will, that this fellow has. So he's a first responder. That's one of the big themes. But the story is kind of woven. It's a woven story between just some of the things that he observes about small town life and the people in a small town. But then also, woven in there is several of his experiences where he, is, and he does. When you read this fellow's short biography, he's done all kinds of stuff. Kind of an amazing person in that he just kind of jumps in and does all these different things. But he's worked for ambulance services and as you know, fireman and first responder and so it's really the kinds of things that he encounters, and you can easily imagine, because he basically wears a pager, and whenever the pager goes off, the house where he ends up living is just a minute or two a walk or run from where he's living, and so he's constantly, the pager's going off, he's constantly running over there, and he happens to be available a fair amount because he's an author. So he writes, this is nonfiction, but he's got fiction and nonfiction books that he's published. This is the only one that I've read, but Michael Perry. But anyway, so it's a great read. I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of humor. It's got a lot of very interesting characters in it, and some real surprises, both good and bad. The things that happen this fellow and some of his fellow community service people. Yeah, both good and bad. So and so, not to give away too much, but here and there, some of the folks associated with some of these first responders actually die themselves, and the first responders sometimes are killed in the line of service to their community. So makes me remember that one of my brothers and one of my brother-in-laws, he at one time he's living down in Texas these days, but at the time he was living in Grand Ridge along with myself and one of my brothers, and the two of them were volunteer firemen. This is just exactly volunteer firemen, volunteer EMT, first responder folks, and that's exactly my brother and brother-in-law. And in fact, one of the pictures that we had for a long time, I'm sure my brother still has it somewhere, but he was the local paper. There was a local fire in winter, and my brother was fighting the fire. He's up on a ladder, and he's got the 2-inch hose or whatever it is. And of course, there's all kinds of water everywhere, and it's extremely cold. And so at one point, he's up on this ladder, and a reporter takes a picture of him, and he's just his firefighter helmet and everything. It all just has these really long icicles hanging off all over the place, and there's like big sheets of ice all over his coat and everything. Yeah, it's kind of a famous picture within the family anyway. They've done, of course, just like these fellows. They run into all kinds of things where, car accidents and suicides, all kinds of stuff that they experienced while they're doing this, community service work. And then you go back a little bit further, and my father actually in the town I grew up in, Grand Ridge, Illinois, he was one of the first 5 or 10 volunteer firemen that actually started the volunteer fire department in the little town I grew up in, a little town where my mother still lives. And and he was obviously in support of the Grand Ridge Volunteer Fire Department. We've done things over the years, work at various fundraising events that they have, and the trucks that they would raise funds and purchase and stuff like that. The very first one my father helped build. It was they had, and I'm not going to get the details right, but they had this old truck frame, a 1930 something truck or whatever, and they ended up welding a tank and some pumps and stuff on it, and they basically fashioned a pumper truck. And I think that was like the first vehicle that this place had. But over the years, they became very well equipped. They're very well supported. There's a fairly significant area around where they are, and again, similar to this area in rural Wisconsin. And the people around there, they depend on these people for the immediate medical attention and to help fight fires, brush fires and house fires and factory fires and on and on and on and on and on. And then in my own personal history, I was in my, I guess, probably right around 30 years old or so. I had a young daughter, and I was living in North Carolina. And for some reason, there was some kind of budget issue with North Carolina, the state of North Carolina at the time. And so they cut out some funding that they had routinely provided to some of the poor people that lived in that area. We were kind of on the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and there were some people. They were quite poor, and they lived hand to mouth, as they say, paycheck to paycheck. Many of them didn't have running water in their homes and things, and so there was a bunch of stuff that was wrong with their homes, or they needed some assistance. And anyway, this fund that normally they could apply and maybe get, let's say, a wheelchair ramp built at their home, well, that all went away. And I happened to hear about a community meeting, and I went, and they were talking about the community people were talking about this, and lamenting and worried that some people wouldn't get some critical assistance that would really be very helpful to them. And so well, what are we going to do? And so then they started talking, well, maybe we can form some kind of volunteers organization, but who would lead it? And there was silence for a handful of minutes, and so I'll do it. And so we actually formed what we called the Brothers Keepers. It's I think it was only together for a couple of years. The state ended up refunding that source for supporting people on the border of poverty or whatever. But during that 2-year period, I helped coordinate. So basically, I was the center point of contact, and people would call me, and there were small groups throughout the area, various counties in the region, and they would call me and kind of form their own small groups, and then they would, well, we want to do this, we want to do that. We had local merchants, lumber yards and stuff that would, donate certain materials and sell us other materials at discounted prices, and on and on and on. And we did dozens and dozens and dozens of projects, fixing roofs, repairing roofs, putting new roofs on, wheelchair ramps, insulating homes, wells for some of the families without running water. The list went on and on and on. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is, well, how much of any of this would have happened if the volunteers involved, the people who were wanting to serve their community, to serve their fellow man, if they had to raise $1 billion and go on national television all the time and get in a bus and tour all over the place just for the privilege of serving their fellow man. And this is one of my major points behind strongly suggesting that we need to change the way that we find our candidates for public office. And in the end, public office holders, they are public servants. This is what they are. They serve the public, or they should be. But what happens, because of the way that we've done it for years, traditionally, is we have these people who would be king. They have the personalities they want. They may have a portion of their personalities that definitely want to serve, but just as much or more so, they have this portion of their personality. They they would want to be king. They want to be famous. They want to be adored. The fellow that we have in the White House right now is one of the poster child for the guy who would want to be king. It doesn't get any more clear than that. And I tell you with absolute certainty, in my own heart anyway, that we would be far, far, far better off, basically finding potential candidates, or identifying a candidate pool the same way that we do jury duty, that we just randomly select some numbers of people who don't want to be king. That they don't want that, and in fact they won't be, because you go through the process and we get all the big money and special interests and lobbyists and all this stuff. We get rid of all of it because basically people in our government would be serving an extended jury duty term. So they would okay, I got my notice. What do you need? And okay, fill in the information and make little videos like this one about what they think, what they feel, and their experiences and so on. And then all of us would look at them and say, this guy, Mr. Smith there, he looks pretty darn good. I think he'd make a great representative, or Mrs. Jones would make a great president, I think. And so then, we basically use the process where we get these people who would not be king, and we put them in office to serve for a set period, and that's it. There's no re-elections or anything. You do your best to serve, just like these fellows. The author of this book and his colleagues and my brother and my brother-in-law and myself and my father and all these other people who we served. We just served. That's all. We wanted to give back to our community. We wanted to give back to our country, so we served. And rather than make that some kind of horrific grind to try to do that for the rest of the people around this world, we should make it relatively easy, and basically ask people to serve for certain well-defined periods of time, and then that's it. And then you go back to being a normal person that's just doing their job or whatever, or retired, whatever it might be. So I just wanted to talk about that we are going to struggle mightily as a nation, as a community, as a people, as a species, until we realize that allowing to select leaders of people who want to be king, who would be king, this is fraught with danger and fraught with error, and we should turn away from this. There are better ways to do it, and we should do it that way. Well, I hope wherever you are, you're considering community service, or perhaps even a political office. But in any case, the rest of humanity, we're a social species. We need each other. So, for those of you who are, the first responders and firemen out there and police and all those other, folks that are out there serving their communities, thank you. Thank you for doing it. I encourage the rest of you to do the same, or do portions thereof that you're comfortable doing. And then I really, 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 really encourage everyone to consider that we would change the way that we identify and elect officials to the public offices in our government, so that we're no longer looking for or looking amongst or sorting amongst people who would be king, and instead we would sort amongst people who would serve. Michael James Ott, Thursday, July 25th, 2019. This has been the Pro and Con Show. Thanks for watching. Another show tomorrow. Tune in. Hopefully at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We'll see. Until then, bye for now.